Maya Colton had spent years carving out her place in the tech industry, building an empire with her intelligence, perseverance, and sheer willpower. She wasn't just another entrepreneur. She was a visionary, someone who had taken risks and turned them into success. A few years ago, she had made a strategic investment in Airlines, a decision that had proven to be immensely profitable as the airline grew to become one of the industry's giants. While she wasn't involved in its daily operations, her stake in the company made her a silent but influential force behind closed doors. That evening, Maya had just concluded an exhausting but rewarding trip. She had delivered a keynote speech at the Silicon Valley Tech Summit, a speech that had captivated investors and sparked fresh enthusiasm for the future of technology. It had been a triumphant day, but all she longed for now was to return home, to the warm embrace of her husband and children, to the sanctuary of her life beyond business. Her flight back to Charlotte was booked, and she had treated herself to a VIP seat, a well-earned comfort after days of relentless networking and intense meetings. As she strolled through the terminal at MSP Airport, the wheels of her roller bag echoed softly against the polished floor. Exhaustion weighed on her, but it was a satisfying kind of exhaustion, the kind that came after accomplishing something worthwhile. The thought of settling into her seat, gazing out of the window, and unwinding before returning to the chaos of everyday life was a welcome one. But as Maya took her seat and began to settle in, the unexpected happened. A flight attendant approached with a well-practiced smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Excuse me, Ms. Colton," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "One of our premium passengers is seated in the back, and we were hoping you'd be willing to switch seats with him." Maya blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "I'm sorry, what?" The attendant hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "There was a mix-up. He was expecting an upgrade. Since you have a VIP seat, we were hoping you'd be willing to accommodate." Maya frowned, her brows knitting together. She had paid for this seat, just like everyone else in first class. It wasn't a privilege, it was a purchase. The flight wasn't even full. Why should she move? Still, she didn't want to be difficult. She kept her voice composed. "I'm sorry, but I paid for the seat," she said, her tone polite but firm. "I'd prefer to stay where I am." The flight attendant's smile tightened, but she nodded and walked away. Maya exhaled, assuming the matter was settled, but she was wrong. Minutes later, another crew member appeared, this one older, dressed in a more formal uniform, clipboard in hand. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her tone carried an unmistakable authority. "Ms. Colton," she began, "we understand that you declined to switch seats, but I'm afraid we need you to move. It's company policy to prioritize our high-tier loyalty passengers when seating conflicts arise." Maya's confusion deepened. "Loyalty status?" she echoed, her patience beginning to wane. "I don't understand. I booked the seat days ago. No one mentioned a conflict." The senior attendant maintained her professionalism, but her body language was telling. This wasn't a request. It was an expectation. "He's part of our highest loyalty tier," she explained, as though that alone justified the demand. "We need to accommodate him. We're asking for your cooperation." Maya inhaled slowly, resisting the frustration building in her chest. Her fingers curled slightly against the armrest. "I paid for this seat," she reiterated, her voice unwavering. "I'm not moving." The attendant didn't argue. She simply gave a curt nod and retreated. Maya watched her go, convinced that this time, surely the matter was closed. But within 5 minutes, it escalated again. This time, the atmosphere had shifted. A third crew member approached. No clipboard, no forced smile, just an air of finality. "Ms. Colton," she said, her tone leaving no room for debate, "I'm afraid we must insist. You've been reassigned to seat 24B. Please gather your belongings and move immediately." Maya stiffened, disbelief hitting her like a slap. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice steady but sharp. The flight attendant gestured toward the middle of the plane. "Your new seat is waiting." The words struck something deep inside her. It wasn't just the inconvenience. It was the blatant disregard for her as a paying customer. The expectation that she would simply yield without question, without protest, without so much as a genuine apology. Maya stood, her movements slow and deliberate. "Are you telling me," she asked, voice quiet yet edged with steel, "that this other passenger is more important than me?" The attendant hesitated. "It's not that simple, ma'am," she said carefully. "It's just our policy." Maya exhaled, shaking her head slightly. She knew there was no point in arguing. The decision had already been made, and her presence in first class was clearly unwelcome. With quiet dignity, she picked up her bag and walked down the aisle, feeling every pair of eyes on her. Some passengers whispered, some turned away, pretending not to notice. But one young woman in 12C couldn't hold back. "That's not right," she murmured to the person next to her. The words cut through Maya's frustration, leaving behind something heavier. Validation, yes, but also a deep, stinging humiliation. When she reached her new seat, the discomfort was immediate. The tight space, the middle seat wedged between a fidgeting young man and a confused elderly woman, felt suffocating. Maya clenched the armrests, her fingers white against the plastic, trying to suppress the growing ache in her chest. As the plane taxied down the runway, murmurs of discontent spread through the cabin. Some passengers voiced their disbelief. Others fell into uncomfortable silence. But one teenager, a few rows ahead, Janie Ruiz, had done something different. She had recorded everything. At first, it had been instinct, a fleeting decision to capture a moment that felt unfair. But as she rewatched the footage, she knew it was more than that. It was proof. Proof of a system that could strip someone of their dignity with a well-rehearsed smile and a corporate policy. Without hesitation, Janie uploaded the video. No hashtags, no dramatic captions, just the raw footage and a simple phrase. She paid for it. The internet did the rest. But Maya didn't know. As the plane ascended, she stared out at the clouds, trying to swallow the bitterness rising inside her. She had experienced setbacks before. She had faced challenges, obstacles, and bias. But this quiet, almost effortless dismissal felt different. It wasn't rage that filled her chest. It was something far more dangerous. A quiet, simmering resolve. The tension from the flight, the overwhelming sense of being dismissed, still clung to Maya like a shadow. Even as she opened her eyes, the plane now gliding smoothly through the sky, the frustration from earlier wasn't so easy to shake. For a fleeting moment, she let herself sink into the hum of the engine, nearly forgetting the chaos that had unfolded behind her. Then her phone buzzed. She reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting a message from her husband, perhaps a reminder about dinner or something about the kids. Instead, what she saw made her breath hitch. 3 missed calls, 2 unread messages, a LinkedIn notification. Her heart stumbled as her gaze landed on the link a friend had sent her. "Maya, you're trending." Confused, she clicked it. The video loaded instantly. There she was, sitting in her seat, her voice steady but firm. "I paid for this seat." The clip showed her refusing to move, her expression calm, controlled. The comments beneath were multiplying by the second. "I would have lost it way earlier than this. Her patience is unreal. But this is ridiculous. Airlines needs to explain itself. Immediately." Maya stared at her screen, the weight of it all pressing down on her. What had been a quiet, personal moment of discomfort was now out in the open for the world to see. Hours ago, she was just a passenger trying to get home. Now she was the face of a conversation much bigger than herself. A movement was forming beneath her feet, and she hadn't even taken a step yet. Around her, the murmur of the plane had shifted. People were whispering, their words no longer about the flight itself, but about her. The young man sitting beside her, clad in basketball shorts, glanced at her screen and let out a low whistle. "Hey," he said, nudging her lightly. "People got your back. That's messed up." She gave him a small, absent nod, her mind still reeling. She hadn't wanted a spectacle. She hadn't sought out sympathy. But something had shifted, something she couldn't ignore. By the time the plane touched down at Midway International Airport, Maya Colton was no longer just a name. She was a headline. The landing should have marked the end of an uneventful journey. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something she hadn't prepared for. As the seatbelt sign dinged off, she felt eyes on her, passengers stealing glances, the hush of whispers following her as she stood, gathered her things and moved toward the exit. Her phone vibrated relentlessly. More messages, more emails, more missed calls. The volume of it all was staggering. The Chicago Tribune wanted to talk. So did the New York Times, CBS News, local reporters. Everyone wanted to hear her side of the story. She didn't respond. Not yet. She wasn't even sure what to make of it all. As she walked through the terminal, she caught the subtle movements, heads turning, conversations pausing as she passed. A man in a Hawaiian shirt lifted his phone, recording as she walked by. Maya exhaled slowly. This was no longer a private matter. It had gone public. And now she was no longer just a passenger. She was a symbol. At the front of the plane, where passengers usually exchanged polite nods and words with the crew, the flight attendants stood in silence. Three of them, their hands clasped in front of them, their gazes averted. Not a single one met her eyes. Not a single word was spoken. Not an apology. Not an acknowledgement. Just silence. And that silence spoke volumes. Outside, as she called for a ride, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Airline's corporate office. A generic apology, carefully worded, an assurance that they were aware of her experience and would be reaching out. She didn't reply. She knew what this was. A neatly packaged attempt to smooth things over. A response designed to quiet the noise, not to correct the wrong. They hadn't just inconvenienced her, they had made it clear who mattered in their system and who did not. And the world had taken notice. By the time she was in the back seat of her ride home, she realized this wasn't going to die down. The video had become something more. It wasn't just about her, it was about fairness, corporate accountability, and the way customers, especially those who didn't fit into loyalty tiers, were treated. Over the next few days, the firestorm only grew. The media attention was relentless. Her inbox flooded with messages from reporters, public figures, and strangers who had been through similar situations. Stories poured in. Parents forced to give up seats for high-status travelers, elderly passengers shuffled around with no consideration, customers who had been treated as second class despite paying the same fare. Then Airlines released a statement, an apology, but not really. A vague, calculated response that expressed regret, but refused to admit fault. A promise of an internal review. A pledge to assess their seating policies. Maya read it and felt nothing. But the world wasn't satisfied. The backlash only intensified. More customers came forward. Old cases resurfaced. A story from 2019 about a woman who had been displaced for a loyalty program member went viral again. This wasn't just Maya's story anymore. It was everyone's. And then the call came. Carlton Drew, a senior director at Horizon Mobility Group, the parent company of Airlines, wanted to talk. Off the record. Maya hesitated. This could be another PR stunt, another attempt to pacify the anger. But something about his tone made her listen. "We've seen the video. We've seen the outrage," he admitted. "Some of us in the company are actually listening. We want to invite you to consult with our leadership board on customer equity. Paid, of course. No strings attached. We just need perspective from someone who understands fairness. Maya exhaled, considering the offer. She hadn't set out to change anything. She hadn't wanted any of this. But what if she could make a real difference? After a few days of reflection, she agreed, with one condition. Every meeting would begin with a recorded, anonymous testimony from real passengers and crew members. No branding, no edits, just the truth. 2 weeks later, she found herself sitting in a boardroom in Dallas, facing 12 airline executives. The room was filled with charts and figures, but Maya wasn't here for statistics. She was here for the people. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't dive into data or policies. Instead, she simply asked, "How many of you have ever been told you don't belong somewhere?" Silence. Over the next few months, Maya worked alongside executives to create what would become the Seat Fairness Framework, a policy that would prevent paying customers from being arbitrarily displaced. It was eventually adopted by Airlines and two other carriers, catching the attention of the FAA. Maya didn't get rich from this. She didn't want fame. But the system changed, and the next time she boarded a plane, booked in seat 1C, no one asked her to move. She had earned her place, and no one, no airline, no corporation, no arbitrary status could take that away from her.